Borderlands for me is one of those gaming franchises that have stuck with me my entire life, as I played my very first Borderlands game when I was roughly 9 years old. I love Borderlands, the atmosphere, the world, everything else in it is just really interesting to me. And as such, when I heard a new Borderlands game was coming out, I was naturally very excited. And while I think it's fair to say Borderlands 4 have been pretty divisive as a game, there is some real good stuff here, and I think there's a lot of good in Borderlands 4, and I want to highlight that in this video. So let's get right into it. Me and Borderlands have quite a weird history. I have played Borderlands 1 a few years after it came out when I was at the tender age of 10 and have played through every subsequent sequel or spin-off since. I absolutely adore Borderlands. It is what initially got me interested in Destiny. It is kinda what led to the creation of this channel through my interest in Destiny, and as such, I have been following the game for quite a while. And it is no secret that Borderlands 3's story wasn't up to snuff. It had really great gameplay, but the story was kinda bad. And in my opinion, Borderlands 3 did do one thing right, and that was it set up a sequel, a potential sequel with the way it ended. So I was excited when Borderlands 4 got its first release trailer. Not only was it another sequel into a franchise I really liked, but it was also gonna reveal what happened after the end of Borderlands 3. And quite frankly, I don't think I'm disappointed. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this, I have to mention Borderlands 4 has a lot of performance issues, partially because of its open world, I believe, and I also believe there's some compiling and loading of the shaders that kind of clogs up the game, or at least that's what it seems like to me. As when I open the game, if I just leave it running for 15 minutes, and then I come back to it, then it runs completely smooth when it had time to load all of the shaders for the game. But until then, it's completely laggy, buggy, and a mess. However, I have to mention that the way I've gotten around most of the performance issues in general is via turning down almost every single setting and putting the optimized mode on performance. That is the way I've been getting around it. It's not an ideal solution, it is just the solution I have. I will not be focusing majorly on the performance issues, because I believe that they will be fixed somewhat soon. So just be warned if you decide to get it. Currently, as of recording this, it runs like shit. The main thing that sets Borderlands 4 apart from Borderlands 3, 2, or 1 is its massive sprawling open world. And when I say massive open world, I genuinely mean it. It feels like they took the Borderlands formula, looked at Skyrim and decided that we want to do that, and then they just did it. And it kind of works. You see, in Borderlands traditionally, the game was cut up into different zones that you could enter, and within those zones you'll have all of your side quests and so on. Here those zones are gone. There's still fast travel, but fast travels are locked behind these safe houses, which are essentially the Far Cry camps. So there's a bunch of enemies that you need to clear them out, and then you can claim the safe house for your own. And at that point, they become a hub from doing bounties, which are repeatable quests that just require you to go and kill 10 enemies of this and so on. And it also becomes a place for vendors, and it allows you to fast travel there. And on top of that, with the open world, there's also a few mini dungeons, which is an idea I think they took kind of from Tiny Tina's Wonderland, essentially having an overworld and then have some dungeons. And those dungeons don't have any form of loading screens either. They are the Order bunkers, and they're of course also the abandoned Order mines. Essentially, you can either run into an old bunker or a mine, and then you'll fight your way through it, and there'll be a boss at the end that you can farm, and they'll each have their own unique drop. On top of all of that, you also have Order silos, which is your climbing challenge, and crawlers, which is also a form of climbing challenge, but a bunch of enemies where you have to bring a certain item up to the top. And then you have your Ripper drill sites, which is essentially a version of Onslaught. You'll go in there and there'll be a massive arena where you'll kill a bunch of dudes, and then eventually once you've killed all the dudes, a boss will spawn, and then you'll have to kill the boss. And when the boss is dead, you get some loot, and you get the chance for their unique and dedicated drop. And in addition to all of that, you also have your traditional collectibles and side quests, which still can unlock new bosses for you to farm and new dedicated drops to get. And in addition to all of that, there's also random events, mainly in the form of boss fights that will spawn that you can then do. And those events will also grant you loot and new things to get and build into. It's all quite nice in my opinion. I love these systems, and I love the fact that there's a lot of different bosses to do, albeit I think farming the open world ones could be very painful just due to the amount of them and how rare they are to spawn sometimes. But it's a lot of, in my opinion, really fun sort of systems to have. In addition to all of that, most of the boss fights are also quite fun if they manage to stay alive for long enough for you to actually fight them. As a lot of them do have different moves that you have to avoid and you have to dodge through, or maybe you just have to slide underneath them or do something movement-wise to avoid damage. And all of that is topped off by great build crafting and a few new systems. One of those systems is phosphine weapons, which is essentially shiny weapons. Those weapons that drop as a phosphine will have a rainbow glow around them, they'll have like a little rainbow coming up at the loot pillar, and they'll have a completely unique skin. So every legendary gun that has a phosphine skin, you can grind for quite a while. They can be really, really rare, and then you'll get one, and when you get that phosphine weapon, the phosphine variation of that weapon, that skin will be unlocked for all other variations of that weapon, which is a great incentivizer for people like me to go out and grind every single gun with that, because it's fun. I love hunting these shiny variations of different weapons. I think this is a great system and it's a great way to keep people engaged. Because beyond getting the gun that you want, maybe you want that slightly cooler variation of it that you can show off to your friends. And that's what it's all about. And I think it's a really fun little system that they have added. And I think the way of doing it, where if you get the drop, despite the fact that it's much, much rarer than in something like Destiny, when you get it, it's unlocked for everything. It's a really, really good way to go about having these shiny weapons. Because all of a sudden, you can grind for a long time to get it, but then when you get it, it's unlocked for everything. For all other variations of that weapon. And I think that's great. That's a great way to do that. The other system is licensed parts. Licensed parts is essentially a way for Borderlands to generate weapons, not just as being an exclusive at Jacobs, but it can be a Jacobs with an alt-fire mode or with the Hyperion shield. As now, every gun can spawn with every other gun manufacturer's part. So when you get a new gun, whether it be a Jacobs or a Hyperion, it could have the Atlas alt-fire or anything like that. And this makes the game so much more diverse in terms of just the sheer amount of randomness you can have on literally everything from your shield to your stem pack to your grenade. And there are some busted combos. Probably the most well-known as of now is the Penetrator Knife. The Penetrator Knife is essentially a knife that makes every single hit that you get for 5 seconds afterwards, when you've tagged an enemy with it, a critical hit. However, where this becomes really fucking broken is when you proc something like Bleed on it, which is a new status effect that you can get by just shooting an enemy and getting a critical hit using a non-elemental gun. And essentially what ends up happening is that because all damage that you get on that enemy is considered a critical hit, even the dot damage, it keeps stacking on top of itself. So you proc Bleed, which stacks more Bleed, then you proc more Bleed through that same Bleed stack, and it's a cycle. And you'll end up with ridiculous damage through that. And it's a really fun little way to sort of get a lot more damage out there. And you can imagine how much you can stack these with other things. As an example, the way that I prefer to stack it at the moment is that I have a Jacobs shotgun with the alt-fire variation being a cluster bomb of missiles that I shoot out. So what I do is that I throw my knife, and then I hit the enemy with that thing, and all of a sudden the entire HP bar disappears. And if it doesn't disappear from just that, it will tick down within a few seconds of me hitting it. It is insanely busted. And there's quite a few ways to abuse this, and there are other combos. As an example, there's a gun that you can get that shoots discs out. But what you really want is with that sort of disc shooting thingy as an alt-fire, and then the Jacobs alt-fire where if you hit an enemy, you have the bullet ricochet around. So what's ended up happening is that you hit an enemy with the discs,
and all of a sudden 20 other discs pops out of the enemy, and they keep reproccing each other for basically ever. It's a loop again, and it's fucking broken, and it does a shit ton of damage. You see, Borderlands 3 ended on a cliffhanger, and despite the fact that Borderlands 3's story was shit, I kinda was interested in where things were going. And as we know now, when Lilith shot the moon into a new solar system, she had the moon land around Kairos, the planet that we are on now. And on that planet there's the Timekeeper. And the Timekeeper essentially has enslaved the entire planet through some twisted form of mind control with a little device that is placed into your nervous system that makes it so he can see through your eyes and act through your body. And this ends up having quite a few different sort of implications as you go throughout the story. One of my favorites is when you lose the thing that sort of distorts the signal so he can't do it. That thing gets shut down. And then you end up killing one of your allies in a quite horrifying cutscene, actually. As the story itself is written in a honestly not awful way. It genuinely feels like Gearbox has gotten a little bit more in touch with when to try to be funny and when not to be. Whereas Borderlands 3 was all on the funny, all the time jokes, all the time train. Here it is a little bit better managed. There are still times where I think the idea of humor takes over a little bit too much to the point where it gets a little annoying. Such as the early quest with Sane, where there's gonna be a lot of talk about sex. Like a massive amount. And in my opinion, it didn't really vibe with me personally. That's not to say that nobody could have found the fun. I'm sure there are plenty of people who did. But I like the other parts of the game more, where it is being taken more seriously and where it takes itself at least a little bit more seriously while still being able to be a little cheeky on the side. And I think that's really something that I quite like. And it meant that I was engaged in the entire story all throughout. I genuinely enjoyed the story, and I'm very interested in seeing where we go next, as the story right now is set up with a few implications. And again, one of the major spoilers, story warnings and all that here, well, at the ending of the game, one of the things that you find out is that maybe the Vault Guardians that you have been killing weren't exactly meant to guard something. They were trying to keep something from coming out to you. And what that means is essentially that all the other games are now recontextualized, because all of the Vault Guardians you have been killing, all the vaults you have been opening, it wasn't because they wanted to keep all the treasure for themselves to keep you out. It's because there's something in there that wants to come out and they were guarding it. And that is such a cool revelation in my opinion. I love this. I fuck with this so hard. And the way it recontextualizes most of the other games and all of that is just really interesting. I genuinely love it. Like, I really cannot mention how good I think this story is. I think it is up there in my opinion. It's just been one of the best ones. I love this story a lot. Like, a lot. And I think it finally broke the entirety of this Borderlands curse, the Borderlands syndrome that has been going around. And like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing where the story goes. However, that is it for now. I don't have a lot of other things to say about the story. Like, we all know of the things that are going on Twitter, through Randy Pitchford's Twitter account, where he has been saying some things I don't quite agree with, but I also think he is a clown and he should probably stop clowning around that much. But in general, I really like the story and I like the game a lot. And I think it's important to realize that despite the performance issues right now, I hope the game can be fixed, and I think it will be. They have already done quite a bit of work on it. And while it isn't up to date yet, it's not even close to where it needs to be, I think it will get there eventually. I strongly believe in that. And I hope it will, because I think Borderlands 4 is a game that almost anybody who likes looter shooters, build crafting, or anything else should play. It's a great game, and it's one for the ages in my opinion. And not only is it a great game, it's a really good Borderlands game, which for me means quite a lot. But with all of that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time. Do the YouTube stuff, bye!